Welcome to this explainer. Today we are talking directly to those of you who might resonate with being called the chosen one. We're talking about someone who has really dug deep, done that heavy inner work, and ultimately come out stronger on the other side. We're breaking down some absolutely fascinating source material that explores a pretty wild psychological dynamic, specifically what happens when someone tries to use your personal struggles to falsely boost their own ego. So let's just dive right into this whole journey of ego, projection, and the literal, undeniable power of a silent comeback.
Right off the bat, I want you to ask yourself, have you ever been someone else's ego boost? Have you ever noticed someone quietly using your low points, those really tough, quiet seasons you go through, as a measuring stick to just make themselves feel better about their own life? Our source material really hits the nail on the head with this phenomenon. It paints this incredibly vivid picture of people who, rather than focusing on their own growth, just kind of lurk. They watch your setbacks. They literally use your moments of just surviving to reassure themselves that they're somehow winning at life. But as we're going to see, playing the comparison game like that is incredibly dangerous, mostly because it's built on a super fragile foundation.
In fact, the source introduces this concept that I think is just brilliant. They call it the ego bandage. It's basically the psychological act of using another person's struggle as a sort of emotional crutch. Imagine a deeply stagnant person who absolutely relies on seeing you struggle just so they can whisper to themselves, well, at least I'm not them. It's wild, right? They essentially keep you in their back pocket, and it isn't because you actually did anything to them. It's just because your temporary hardship is the only thing that temporarily soothes their incredibly fragile self-image. It lets them completely avoid doing their own internal healing.
Our source does a fantastic job of breaking down this core conflict. Think of it as two totally different operating systems. On one side, you've got the envious ego. This energy is loud, it's performative, and it desperately needs other people to fail, because at its core, it operates from this deep inner poverty. But then, in total contrast, you have the silent healer. That's you in your quiet season. You're authentic, you're constantly evolving, and you are hyper-focused on your own lane. You're operating from sheer resilience in what the source beautifully calls a sacred silence. The funny thing is, the envious person thinks progress has to be loud, so they completely misinterpret your quiet healing as you just being stuck.
And that leads perfectly into one of the absolute best reframes from the entire text. They thought you were buried, but you were actually planted. Wow. Detractors will look at your quiet season, maybe a time when you completely went off the grid just to recover and rebuild, and they mistakenly think you surrendered. They look at your struggle and assume, yep, that's their final form. But in reality, what they were watching wasn't a burial at all. It was a sacred calibration. You were in a root-building phase. You were down there doing the deep, unseen work in the dark soil, getting ready for a kind of massive growth that they couldn't even begin to comprehend.
So think about what happens when they finally decide to check back in on you. The source uses this incredible metaphor. Picture someone smugly walking into a burning building, fully expecting the fire to be dead. They're just waiting to find some ashes and wreckage so they can feel good about themselves. They open the door and bam, they're instantly blinded by roaring flames. That is exactly what happens the moment they check your page or ask around about you, hoping for that little hit of superiority. Instead of finding ashes, they find your total glow-up. They are met with undeniable proof that you are thriving, and it just completely shatters their whole reality.
Now, I want you to guess exactly how many battles you were actually fighting against them during all of this. 0. Literally 0. You weren't in competition with them. You probably weren't even aware they were playing a game in the first place. You were just in your own lane, healing your past, minding your business. Meanwhile, they're over there shadowboxing in the pitch dark, completely exhausting themselves throwing punches at an opponent who wasn't even in the ring. The universe rigged this game in your favor simply because you were operating with authentic power, while they were running on pure pretension.
I absolutely love how the source frames this next part. They say, your downfall was just a data download. That's so good, right? People who are genuinely walking this path, they don't actually lose from their pain. They evolve through it. Every single scar you picked up was really just a receipt for new wisdom. And every misstep that your detractors pointed and laughed at, that was just a necessary software update for your next level. So while they were wasting time mocking your temporary breakdown, you were basically just rebooting, recalculating, and reprogramming for a massive leap forward.
So how does all this play out? The material maps this out systematically into what it calls the cosmic humbling process. It's literally how the universe flips the script. Step 1, they mock your quiet journey and build up this totally false reality where they're the superior one. Step 2, they sneakily spy on your life, just waiting for that quick ego hit.
But step 3 is where the plot twist drops. They end up choking on your undeniable progress because, surprise, you didn't stay down. Which brings us to step 4. Their entire illusion just cracks right down the middle, leading to a total ego collapse. It is basically a divine slap in the face to anyone who mocked your journey.
To really cement this idea, the material gives us another amazing visual. Imagine an envious person frantically trying to build a house on the side of a really shaky hill. Deep down, they know their confidence is built on super weak foundations, just noise, maintaining an image, and trying to pull you down, but they just ignore it. Then they look out their window and they see your tower rising. It is solid, it's secure, it was built from rock bottom through actual genuine healing. The very second they see your unshakable tower, their fragile little hilltop doesn't feel so safe anymore. Just your mere existence causes their ego home to completely cave in.
And because of that incredibly solid foundation you build, you unintentionally become a forced reflection for them. The psychology going on here is fascinating. Your silent success acts like this giant mirror, proving that they are the ones who've actually done nothing with their own lives because they spent all their time obsessed with watching you rebuild yours. You didn't even try to expose them. You just existed, and you kept rising. But just by doing that, you essentially locked them in a room with their own reflection. You stripped away all their distractions and forced them to look right at the reality they've been running from for years.
So what is actually at the core of this bizarre behavior? The source defines it perfectly as ego projection. It's when someone fears their own stagnation so deeply that they actively wish for and even falsely perceive failure in you. And they do this solely to avoid looking at their own unhealed mess. By deconstructing this psychological defense mechanism, the source makes one thing perfectly, undeniably clear. The mocking, the creeping on your pages, the quiet envy, actually scratch that, the loud envy. It was never ever about you. It was always just a terrified distraction from their own reality and their own utter lack of progress.
There's this really beautiful analogy in the source where they compare this dynamic to pulling back the curtains in a super dusty room. Imagine a room that literally hasn't seen the sun in years. Everything looks totally fine as long as it's kept in the dark. But when you walk in, when your pure, healed energy just enters their space, it's like ripping back those heavy curtains. You don't even have to judge them or say a single word. Simply by existing in your authentic truth, you shine this blazing, blinding light on all the dirt and stagnation they've been so comfortable living with. Your light makes their dust impossible to ignore.
When you pull all of this together, it becomes so obvious why your specific energy, this spiritual sovereignty, is just so wildly disruptive. It triggers awakenings in people without you even having to open your mouth. It effortlessly exposes fake realities. It represents this relentless, unstoppable evolution that deeply, deeply threatens anybody who has settled for mediocrity. Because you teach and lead purely by existing, you force the absolute truth up to the surface. Your calm, grounded presence acts like a divine alarm clock going off for people who are fast asleep in their own delusions. You don't ask to disrupt their comfort zones. Your vibration literally just demands it.
And honestly, here is the ultimate, most delicious irony revealed in the whole text. You actually become their unwanted mentor. Think about it. The exact same people who loudly prayed for your downfall, the ones who made fun of you in public when you were having your quiet rebuilding phase, yeah, they are now quietly studying you in private. They are taking detailed notes. Behind closed doors, they are secretly trying to copy your healing steps, your affirmations, your overall energy. Now, their pride will absolutely never let them admit this openly, but your progress has totally become the secret treasure map they're desperately trying to follow.
This all brings us to such a beautiful realization. You didn't outshine them, you out-healed them. And let me tell you, that is what truly stings the envious ego. This victory we've been breaking down today, it isn't about petty revenge at all. It's not about flexing on social media or clapping back. It is entirely about the undeniable, quiet power of authentic alignment. It is about you refusing to shrink yourself down just to make someone else feel comfortable. You became living, breathing proof that real healing is possible, and simply by out-healing their negativity, you rendered their opinions completely irrelevant. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly empowering thought to end on. The cosmic humbling, it's complete. The illusions are completely shattered, and the noise of their fragile ego has completely faded into the background where it belongs. You have emerged from all of this with just unshakable sovereignty. So the only real question left for you to answer now is, what are you going to build next in your quiet power? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep trusting that sacred silence of yours, keep building on that solid rock foundation, and we will definitely see you next time.